Sending your child off to preschool is a big step. In recent weeks, I've seen plenty of moms I know post on social media about being emotional while dropping their child off for their first week of preschool. And of course, parents want to do everything they can to set their child up for a smooth transition into this school year. But what is actually the best way to do that? I decided it was time to talk to some teachers. Today, I'm asking Elizabeth Lane, a preschool teacher, what she wishes all parents knew before sending their child off to preschool. Elizabeth is currently a teacher at St. Anne's Belfield in Charlottesville and previously taught at a Montessori preschool. Some of the things she shared are pretty simple, but they're also things that I know I never thought of, and some may surprise you. So if you have a child in preschool or one that's not quite there yet, this episode is for you. But before I dive in, I just want to note Elizabeth is sharing her personal thoughts based on her professional experience. She is not speaking for the school where she works. Hi, I'm Allison and Egidi, a pediatric sleep and wellness coach and a mom of two. I love to help parents find solutions. This is How Long Till Bedtime. Well, hi, Elizabeth. Thank you so much for joining me today. One of my previous clients connected us when she heard on Instagram that I wanted to do this episode, and I'm so glad that she did. So shout out and thank you to Amanda. I'm really excited to talk to you today about all things that you wish every parent sending their child to preschool knew. But before we dive in, I always like to ask my guests to briefly share what inspired them to pursue their vocation.
Absolutely. Well, I'm so excited to be here. And yes, shout out to Amanda for connecting us. Well, I've always wanted to be a teacher, but the true question was what age? And I used to teach my teddy bears when I was a little girl, so this was always going to be the dream. I was very consistent. But when it came to majoring in elementary education, I have my master's in teaching from UVA, and the licensure that I have is pre-K through 6th grade, which is a huge range. So it became more of what age do I want to work with? And then it became very clear when I was placed in my pre-K practicum, I believe it's my second year of my program, and I was placed in Jackson Via Elementary School in their preschool department. And I walked in and instantly I knew that preschool was for me. The amount of joy that is in a preschool classroom, both from the teachers and from the children, is unlike any other age. And so I knew that I wanted to pursue preschool education specifically because it is so joy-centric. The children want to be there. Their lives are home and school. And as they get older, obviously other extracurriculars come in. But when they're that young, you get to be such a foundational experience for them that you feel like a little bit like a celebrity. So you know that you're making a big impact on their lives because so much of their life is school. Not only are you surrounded by joy, you're making huge foundational impacts, but you also know that your impact is going to impact them for the rest of their lives, the rest of their educational career. Because obviously in high school, some people, really enjoy that age. But I don't know if my AP Stats teacher will make the impact on the rest of my life like I know my preschool teacher did. So knowing that impact was what prompted me to pursue preschool specifically.
Well, I feel like that's a true calling because at no point did I walk into my kids' preschool room and think, I belong here. I would make a great preschool teacher. So that's great. The world needs people like you.
I appreciate that.
So let's dive right in and talk about things that you wish every parent knew. What is the first thing that you would bring up?
Well, we are really lucky in that my school offers an opportunity to actually tell our parents a lot of these things. So these things that I'm going to share come from both skills that my school has outlined and conversations and topics I bring up in what we call our connection meetings the first day of school. So I'm very lucky that at my school, before the first day, we have a conference where my job is to listen and understand the family connection, the caregiver connection, before that child steps foot on campus. So it's really exciting to be able to make that connection and talk about these skills before we start. So I'm pulling from that especially. So the first thing that I recommend when it comes to working with this age is the amount of independence that we as adults can provide for them and set them up for success. So I always think about it in terms of a toolbox. When a child first comes to school, their toolbox is pretty empty because they've never been a child amongst 10 other children. Or maybe they have, but in a different situation, maybe daycare. But in the classroom, in the 3s, 4s classroom, which is the age I work with, 3s and 4s, there's more ownership on them. There's more for them to do. And they often rise to the challenge, but it can be overwhelming on that first day. So the best thing that we can do as adults is to prepare them for those things, to prepare them by giving them tools for their toolbox. And they're not going to have it all down the first day, and that is totally okay. But what we can do as educators and as parents is just providing those tools in advance as best as we can, because we just want them to feel prepared. The last thing we want anyone to feel on their first day of school is overwhelm, because we're all nervous. The children are nervous, the teachers are nervous, parents can be nervous, and it's okay. But we want to make sure that they feel prepared. So the big thing that we do in our classroom is facilitating independence and empowering them. So something that we at my school and between the parent partnership meetings, we talk a lot about ways that we can make sure that children feel independent on that first day. So an element of that is name recognition. A lot of things in preschool are labeled by name, your cubby spot, maybe your backpack spot, maybe your space. We teach outdoors and indoors, so we have cottages in the outdoor section. There might be labeled everywhere. Everything's labeled so that everyone feels that they have their place. It makes not only a teacher's life a lot easier, but also makes the child feel a lot more settled in if they can walk into a space and go, there's my name. Oh, I know I belong here because there's my name. And not only does it excite them and make them feel like they belong, but it's also just smooth. They can go, oh, there's my stuff, bag down, what's next? So being able to foster that independence is overwhelming to think about doing all at once. So breaking it down to little tasks of whenever you see their name printed anywhere, if they get items for back to school, like their lunchbox, their backpack, familiarizing them with those letters so that they can recognize it, in addition to recognizing which one is their water bottle, which one is their backpack. I've seen some parents go to the store with their child so their child picks out the backpack. It's already special to them, instead of in the morning or day before, this is your backpack, here you go. They might not remember the next day. They need a lot of practice and repetition. So those independence factors are really huge and will make that first day so much smoother, because there is going to be a lot for them to do that first day. So the more that we can do to prepare them with those independent practices, the better. Specifically, not just name recognition, that's one thing that you can do, but practicing that at home. But also a big element that we recommend in this skills, we recommend practicing over the summer pamphlet that we send out. A big part of that is self-care. So being able to dress and undress for toileting purposes, shoes, being able to do that, being able to take off a backpack and put it back on is a very big skill. And it's okay if they're not perfect at it, but the biggest element that I think makes a difference as a teacher is that they try, is that they are at least trying once on their own. And then if they need to ask for help, that's totally fine. But knowing that they're trying and they're attempting to problem solve is a hard skill for me to teach. So if they come in already wanting to try on their own because they're used to trying on their own, it makes our first day a lot better. So fostering that independence is really, really crucial for a smooth transition the first day. Not only that first day, but for the whole year, we really are fostering that independence and making them feel empowered.
That makes a lot of sense. I did not teach my girls how to recognize their name. I'm thinking because they were at daycare that then flowed into a daycare preschool that I just relied on the teachers there to do it. But I do have this very clear memory of them telling me one day that I needed to help them learn to put their coat on. And they had this very specific technique. They said, look, you can lay it down.
Sure.
They stick their arms in and they flip it over their head.
Yep, the
and
flip.
the flip coat on. And they said, look, this will be really helpful if you can teach the girls to put their own coat on. Because generally I was in such a hurry coming in and out of the house that I'm just doing it for them. And so they learned it really quickly, but until a teacher told me, hey, could you work on this? It'd be really helpful. I hadn't even thought about it. And I also have no memory of teaching the backpack thing, but that makes absolute sense. So I can already tell I'm falling into the camp where I could have benefited from your pamphlet and some guidance. I was totally the parent who just relied on the teachers to do it all. So I was not the ideal parent in this regard.
Oh, no, that's okay, because a lot of the time that daily practice is not only something that you're working on at home, but they're working on at school. We take backpacks on and off all day. They're putting coats on and off all day. So it's more of, we never want it to feel like, oh, you need to work on this. It's we need to work on this as a team. Oh, here's what we're doing at school. Let's partner at home. What are you doing at home? How can I support you? So kind of that teamwork element. If the teacher and parent or any family member or caregiver are on the same page, that consistency makes such a big difference. And I also don't want to ever make anyone feel like they have to teach them in the moment. I hear what you're saying about rushing. I mean, being a parent and getting kids out the door, you know, you've got to get your coffee, you've got to get your breakfast, their breakfast, coats, shoes, making sure your keys are in the right place. A lot of things are going on. We would not expect you to use that moment to teach the flip because there's so much going on. So just as I wouldn't want anyone to expect me to teach one child in the middle of 10 children transitioning, that's not necessarily the time to teach that. But that time where it is slowed down, you have 10, 15 minutes, maybe you finished an activity early or dinner is simmering on the stove and you have a moment, you can step away and say, oh, let's practice our coats right now where there's no rush. That's what we do at school. We do a lot of, okay, let's practice this skill in a calm setting. And when we have time to unpack each step and talk it out, a lot of preschool is narrating our thoughts and narrating how we're doing things because it's explicit feedback that they need to understand. And while older children can understand what we're doing by looking at us, younger children really need that explicit, slow modeling. Okay, I'm putting my coat gently on the ground. You'll notice the zipper is facing up so I can reach it. So those are things, kind of that modeling of that explicit instruction and pointing out what to notice. You can't do that when you're rushing out the door. So that is, I totally understand that being overwhelming in the moment. So we definitely at preschool take those teachable moments, slow down so that later when we are in a rush, we can go, oh, we've done this. We know what to do. Let's try again. And even still, there's going to be slip-ups. There's going to be times where that's, silly zipper can't get up. And so they're practicing, and it's okay. You're going to help them. But my biggest kind of piece that I try to work in is never doing the entire thing myself for them. Because what that does is it teaches them that they are not capable. And while I want to encourage them to ask for help if they need it, I always ask them to try on their own first. I encourage them to ask a friend. And then if they can't do it past that point, or if both of the children can't, then they can come to me. And then I will find some element that they can still feel empowered. So if it's a zipper, which is the example of the day, I will start the zipper and then their job is to pull it all the way up so that they still feel an ownership of it. And then we say, oh, next time, maybe you could try it, making them feel like they still are capable. I'm trying to think of more of the independence elements. So the name recognition, self-care skills. We don't expect them to tie shoes at this age, but being able to, especially working with Velcro and lifting the tongue is a skill. That's an explicit skill, knowing how to use that tiny, tiny part of the back of the shoe, that little tiny ribbon to pull. Those are things that it need explicit instruction. And whether that's coming from home, coming from school, or both, it definitely needs some dedicated time.
That's awesome. When you and I had talked before, we talked a little bit about these, what I would call life skills that seem so common sense, but obviously I didn't think of them. So I think it's great. There's going to be a lot of people that are like, oh yeah, that makes total sense. I should do that. And then we also touched on emotional skills. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So sometimes preschool teachers refer to that as the hidden curriculum, the socio-emotional piece. Because while it's not going to be, here's a lesson plan and every objective that we are going to meet today, we're going to cover kindness. Sure, there are sometimes explicit lessons on that, but the teachable moments are going to come from students interacting with each other. And that's not something you can plan for all the time. So the things that we work on and, again, explicitly teach are often in response to what we're seeing. Sure, we do a lot of proactive measures, but we also, in the hidden curriculum, are keeping an eye out for what our class is experiencing and responding to it. So when it comes to what we wish parents would know is, again, that kind of independence element and, again, explicit teaching. So when you recognize a conflict is occurring, maybe there's siblings, maybe there's a friend, if you're recognizing that there's a skill that a child is struggling with or is taking a long time to work through, like, for example, if they face an upset. In my classroom, we call it an easy fix, so something that's quick fix. We never want to make it sound like, oh, that's not a big deal. We call it a quick, easy fix because we don't want them to think that their problems are insignificant, but we think more in terms of the solution. Oh, quick fix, or oh, is this something that a grown-up really needs to help you with? Is this a larger, more complicated issue? So those quick fixes that they can handle themselves, things like they dropped their marker on the ground, they can't reach it, and they're frustrated. So that is something that they are allowed to be frustrated by. But if they're flying off the handle at it, that's going to make their school day a lot harder because it'll take some time to bounce back. So the things that I wish parents knew, and a lot of parents do know because we talk about it and we have really awesome open conversations about it at our school, is building in support for that proactively. So again, with that independence piece, adding to the toolbox. So a lot of things that we do in our classroom are understanding deep breathing and not making it necessarily about mindfulness. Some students are ready to understand mindfulness, but making it really about the breath itself. So I recommend this book called Alpha Breaths. You can find it on Amazon. It comes in a board book, and it is A to Z different breaths that have one for every letter, and they're cute and easy to remember. Like for cake breath, which is my class's favorite, they get a little round cake with their hands, and then we pretend to smell the icing and blow on the candles. And that's a deep breath. But you're not saying to your child, take a deep breath, take a deep breath. Like, yeah. They might not know what that means, but they know what a cake breath is. But that's something that we explicitly taught. So again, proactive measures so that when my class is starting to get wiggly, I can tell that they need a calm down reset moment. I say, cake breath. Here we go. We can take a cake breath. Instead of saying, take a deep breath, guys, take a deep breath in the middle of the chaos. And that resets their nervous system. It allows them to calm down. It's a socio-emotional skill, and they don't even recognize it yet. So it's a hidden curriculum piece. It's a skill that they are learning while they're at school, but it's not necessarily something that we're going to say, okay, objective of the day, learn how to calm down. Like, no, that's something they're going to learn throughout the course of the day or the year or the rest of their life. We're all still learning how to calm down. But again, that kind of harking back to what we said earlier, the independence piece applies to socio-emotional as well. So what are some strategies that your child can use in the classroom and at home? So because a lot of the resources that might be available at home, like asking mom or dad for a hug, might not be available at school. Obviously, they can always ask a teacher for a hug. That's a big one. But what skills can your child take with them that doesn't require any outside resources? So taking those deep breaths, asking an adult for a hug, maybe taking a walk, going and getting a drink of water. All of those things are strategies that we can build in as teacher and parent to support them, not just as students, but as actual just small humans.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny you say the cake breath because my girls definitely use that in preschool. They didn't learn it from me, but I love the book. I've not seen the book, but I will definitely make sure we link to it in the show notes. So I love the idea of having the book to work through that. But then also, I remember we worked on Just Walk Away.
Yes.
So
huge.
When my girls were arguing, I would say, sometimes we just have to walk away when we feel unhappy. I'd so much rather you just walk away than hit your sister or get upset. Just walk away. And so sometimes I would hear them talking to each other because my girls are only 18 months apart. So they were kind of in preschool at the same time. They'd say, I'm just going to walk away.
It's a skill. It's a skill. And I think you really touched on something that's important, is modeling that for them, is explaining, okay, sometimes it is, here's an explicit handing, here is a strategy. You're quite literally modeling it for them and handing them the tool because they're not going to know it exists otherwise. And then you yourself can apply that and model it for them. So something I do when I'm getting frustrated in the classroom is I label it. I say, when you friends are talking over me and I can't read my story, it makes me feel frustrated. I'm going to go take a water break and then I'll come back. And so modeling that for them, that teachers have feelings too.
Yes.
That is very important for them. And then also modeling a strategy. Or I'll say, oh, okay, I need to take an alligator breath, which is extending your arms like an alligator and deep breathing. Things like that I apply to my own behavior so that they see it being used. And then they often very cutely will mimic my behavior, sometimes I'll say I'm going to go take a sip of my coffee, and I'll come back and they go, oh, I'll go take a sip of my coffee too. And I say, okay, yeah, go take a sip of your coffee. But again, that explicit modeling and instruction, and there's nothing more powerful than seeing an adult that they care about do it too. So that is an emotional piece or socio-emotional skill that you can model for them. It doesn't take any money. It just takes a little bit of time. It doesn't take any special books. It's just modeling for them what your strategies are, because I feel like we all sometimes need our own calm down strategies too, but putting it in front of your children and again explicitly teaching it and explicitly modeling your thinking, a think aloud as we call it, is extremely valuable for them.
I do that all the time with the preschool kids with sleep.
Mm-hmm.
So I always tell parents, you need to talk about your own sleep. And did you stay up too late? Did you wake up during the night? Were you up and you struggled to go back to sleep? Or do you need to go to bed early tonight? And talking about when you get a great night of sleep and help normalize even the fact that every night of sleep isn't perfect and that's going to be okay. So I always talk about that with my preschool parents, is that we want to, what do you call it, a think aloud?
Think aloud, yeah.
We want to do that with sleep as well. So that really resonates with me. How about the emotions around school drop-off?
Absolutely. That is one of the biggest pieces that parents worry about a lot of the time, because they have anxieties about what that's going to be like for them, what that's going to be like for their child. And oftentimes it's remarkably unlike what you think it's going to be, because it's such a new situation. And again, the tools that you can give in your child's toolbox will help you here. So if, for example, I'm trying to think of the child that can seamlessly transition, what that looks like, what those skills look like. So a child who can transition seamlessly from their caregiver to school starts their day off on the right foot because they are not worried. There's no time for them to have to cover and resettle or go back and kind of settle again and make up for the time that they could have jumped right in, because oftentimes there is an activity that's enticing them and encouraging them to join the class. If a child comes in upset, not only did it probably take some time to coax them away from their caregiver, but it's going to take some time for them to feel their feelings and return to the group. And that can take 10, 15, 20 minutes, and then the entire activity has passed, and then they might be upset about that. So thinking kind of selflessly, not just about, this might be hard for me to do, but let me set my child up for the most successful drop-off, because that's going to allow them to start their day on the best foot. So a child that will seamlessly transition is one that it's clear that they've done it before. So the children who have practiced separating from a caregiver, the first day is not necessarily the day to practice this. The days leading up to it are. We recommend at our school a lot of the times taking some time to familiarize your child with the drop-off spot or the playground, coming to visit your school's playground on a weekend so that they can feel excited about what they're going to look forward to. A lot of schools offer an opportunity for photos of their teacher to go out. So if your school has a faculty directory or hearing a message from your teachers, oftentimes they'll send a message or send a picture. Familiarizing them with what to expect is going to create that seamless transition. Making sure that they feel comfortable and confident stems from us as adults feeling comfortable and confident. So if a parent is excited and eager for them to get out of the car, but with a hug and saying, "Oh, I love you so much. I can't wait to hear all about your day. I'll see you soon. This is your special time with your teacher in your class. I can't wait to hear about it." And then a quick goodbye and then driving off the hill. And even if you're crying as you go down the hill, that's okay, because you have told your child, you are safe. You are in a place that I am happy that you're in, and I can't wait to hear about it. Because if you're nervous or you're allowing them to cling to you, you're telling them that the space that they're going into is not safe. If you're excited about it and you're saying, "Oh, you're going to have a great time. I'm not worried at all," even if you're kind of worried internally, if you exude confidence and ease, it tells them the message that they're safe and that their parent, their caregiver is confident about where they're going to go. And again, explicit instruction of here's what to expect, because in preschool, they need a lot of priming before any big transition. So in our classroom, that's a lot of, okay, you're going to see this. I'll know you're ready when I see you sitting in this way. I'll know you're ready when your backpack is here. A lot of that explicit modeling and instruction also applies to in the morning. So when we drive up the hill, you're going to see a bunch of cars. I'm going to say goodbye to you, and Miss So-and-so is going to open the door. I'm going to stay in the car, and you get to go out and join your friends. You know, explicitly stating what's going to happen so that they feel prepared. And then also they like knowing what's going on. And then you can kind of make it a game, being like, "Oh, do you see Miss So-and-so?" Just like we said, "Oh, she's standing right there. She's so ready for you." And things like that where they can feel confident and capable of what's going on. So that seamless transition, the key points are preparation through talking about it, visiting if able, some kind of connection, looking forward to something. So allowing them to feel excited and allowing them to also express nerves and make that okay. And then also keeping it short, keeping it brief, that "love you, I can't wait to see you at the end of the day, here we go, goodbye." Because if we're lingering, it just prolongs anxiety. And it is often remarkable that when a child, they might arrive upset, and that happens, and that's okay. We affirm them in the preschool and we say, "I know it is so hard to say goodbye to your mom, your dad, your grandma, whoever's in the car with you because you love them so much. I understand. Would you like a hug? Would you like a sip of water?" We affirm it, and then we say, "Oh, take a look. We have this exciting thing for you." And most of the time, all they need is an affirmation and something to kind of change their mood, and then they move forward. Because thinking about it from an adult perspective, if I was really upset about something and then someone came to me and was like, "You're fine, you're fine, you're fine, like, let's go," I'm going to feel really unseen and I'm going to feel really ignored. But if someone says, "I totally get why you're upset, but we're going to go do this cool thing if you want to join us," I would say, "Okay, I feel heard. I'm able to move forward knowing that I feel heard," because we don't want to push it down.
But it sounds like from the parent side, so some parents probably also feel that urge, like, I want to affirm that they're upset. And I think this probably leads to some of the lingering because they want to make their child feel seen and heard. And so it almost sounds like you're saying we kind of need to transfer that opportunity to the teacher. So even if the child's upset, we need to be confident, show our child that we believe this is the right thing for them, but then trust that the teacher is going to do that nurture piece that sometimes the parents want to cling on to.
Oh, yes. I think you hit the nail right on the head, that passing the torch, saying, she's going to help you, or this, he's going to help you transition here. And also an element of that is, I think I learned this from a mentor teacher. I loved the way that she said this, that when they say inevitably, I miss my mommy, I miss my daddy, a lot of the teachers will often just respond, oh, you'll see them at the end of the day. That doesn't help with right now. That doesn't help with that moment. That's kind of kicking the can down the road of like, okay, it's fine. You'll see them later. But what we say oftentimes is, oh, I miss my mom sometimes too. I get it. I totally understand. But this is our special time together. There's no other point. When you go home, we won't be with our classmates. We won't get to play here on the playground. We won't get to do this activity together. This is our special time, and your mom and dad sent you here to have that special time. So making it about the special time that you share, a mentor recommended that to me, and that's been so special using that, and it really works, I've found, because you're acknowledging, okay, yes, this is a time where you might miss somebody else, but this is our special time. And then you get your special time with your caregiver, your mommy, your daddy later. And then I think if the parent uses the flip side, where it says, I'm going to miss you too, but you get your special time with Miss Elizabeth, and your special time with, if you can name friends that they know, reminding them of those positive connections. And the fact that reminding them very explicitly, those people don't live at your house. This is your special time to spend with them. And that transition, that kind of pivot towards, oh, this is my special time with these people I care about, really helps with the perspective shift. So supporting that as much as possible.
Yeah, so while I maybe didn't get all the other prep stuff right, I crushed drop-off. So I think my kids definitely benefited from having gone to daycare, but I remember Ainsley's big transition was she left the daycare preschool and did a transitional kindergarten year, which was basically extended preschool. And at her new school, it was a school she never went to. Her sister wasn't there, and we had to do drop-off out of the car, which at daycare you take your kids in. And it was the first time I'd really seen her waver, and she said, I'm not going to do that, or you have to take me in. And we did do one drive-by where I drove her. This is where the cars come up the hill, they drop you off. And we walked through it, and she was still saying no up until the day we went. I'm not doing it. No, I really want you to take me in. And she got really weepy on the way there. And I did, mainly because I'd done a lot of daycare drop-off. I did the whole, I love you so much, and just shoved her out the door. And she was great. I think it was just that first day. Mm-hmm. And then she actually felt really proud of herself that she had done it. She's like, oh, I walked into the school without my mommy. So it shifted from quite distraught and them having to kind of pull her out of the car to her being really proud of herself. And so that, I do feel like I did a good job of not letting my emotions override the smart thing to do.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, those emotions are completely valid from both the children and the parent, because everybody in every class, in every preschool ever, there's going to be a crying child the first day. That's just part of the game. It's completely developmentally appropriate. So if a child is freaking out or upset that first day, nobody's doing anything wrong. They're not misbehaving. The parent didn't do anything wrong. The teacher's not doing anything wrong. It's just scary and intimidating, and different children will express it in different ways. But every child feels an element of it, a little bit of nerves, a little bit of anxiety. They're just expressing it in different ways and have different levels of familiarity. So if, your child does roll out of the car, great. If that child needs a hug, great. If that child needs to be walked that first day, that's okay. It's the matter of over time letting it go. So if that first day they do need the walk-in, maybe the second day walking them just to the front door, and then the next day just to the car line. So staggering it back so that they feel more confident. And again, like you kind of said, at the end of the day, still a little bit of just going in the deep end, like, you got this. Because most of the time when they actually do it, it's, oh, that wasn't that bad, and I'm glad to do that. And encouraging what they're going to do when they get there. Saying, oh my gosh, I totally get that it is hard to say bye to mom or say bye to dad. But when you get to your classroom, I bet Miss Elizabeth has the most fun thing for you to do. And I shared that with some parents this year, actually. We've had conversations about how to encourage children in the morning, which is perfect for, sleepy heads, in the morning. How do we get them out the door? Because especially with siblings. I've had a lot of questions this year about how do I encourage my child to get going to school and making sure that they get plenty of time to do the activities in the morning. And we've talked about that, of making explicit conversations about when you sleep later, or when you don't get your shoes on as quickly, or when we forget this thing or we spill this thing, we get less time, which means you get less time at school. If you want to be able to get right to school and have the fun Lego time, sit next to your best friend, get to give Miss Elizabeth a hug, we have to make sure that we're doing this XYZ and setting out your morning plan. And I've had parents give me feedback saying that having those explicit conversations about if X, then Y in the morning really helps, so that when they are rolling through, they're like, we got to get to Miss Elizabeth. She's waiting for us. That motivation actually really helps. So making school an exciting place is kind of the key to it all, I would say, is to sum it all up. I really encourage parents to make preschool an exciting place, even if they've never been there before, making sure that they feel excited about it and feel capable of participating in it.
Yep. Well, I just recorded an episode on how to have a smooth morning routine. So now you can point your parents to episode 101. It's all about
there we go.
How to have a smooth morning routine and get your kids off to school.
Mm-hmm.
So another area I'm guessing you hear a lot about, and I know I heard a lot about it from parents when I was in preschool, is the whole topic of reading. And I'd love to hear, what do you wish parents knew about learning to read?
Yeah, that is a golden question, because I get that at so many conferences, a lot of questions about how do I know that they're ready, and how do I know what to do, and where do I start, and are they ready to read? Is this reading? A lot of concern about reading. And obviously with my background I have my master's in teaching from UVA, a large chunk of that coursework is understanding the development of reading and understanding the timeline and what it looks like and when. And so a lot of my background is in literacy and in literacy instruction. And it takes a lot longer than I think a lot of people realize. And that's okay, because different children are going to start at different points. But a mentor once told me, teaching is standing on the shoulders of giants. Mentors passing on things that I'm sure they got from mentors. But a mentor once told me that advice she gives to parents as a rule of thumb is they will start to read when their teeth start falling out. So kind of that age is when you're going to really start those big meaty skills. We are setting the groundwork at ages 3 and 4, especially when they're starting to, as we talked about earlier, take on more of these roles, take on more independence. That is the key shift between a 2-year-old program and a 3 and 4-year-old program, is more of the ownership of the experience, because we see them as extremely capable. I think that's also something that, hilariously, there's kind of this misbalance of, maybe I want to make sure that, maybe this child at this age should be reading, also they're not capable, right? This kind of misbalance of like, oh, I need to do that for you. But in the reality, it's kind of more level, that they are more capable than we think they are, but also it takes longer than we might expect, because reading is a developmental process over time. So at our age that we're working with, not at our age, with our children's ages, with the 3 and 4-year-olds that we're working with, we are going to make sure that our biggest job is fostering a love of learning. We are going to see children at different developmental levels. We're going to see, especially in a mixed age program like a lot of preschools do, Montessori does this, a 3, 4, and 5-year-old program. My school does 3s and 4s. You're going to have children in different readiness levels. You're going to have children who are scribbling, and you're going to have children who can start to write letters, and you're going to have children who can start to write words, all in the same class. And that's okay, because it takes time. But the most important thing that we can do as adults is foster an excitement and pride for them, no matter where they are. Because I'm sure we all know an adult who is not a reader nowadays. And if you ask them why, a lot of the time they get burnt out, or it was forced on them, or in high school they were pushed and pushed and pushed to read the certain books, but not what they were interested in. I mean, my brother learned to read. We were Montessori children when we grew up. He learned to read because of Pokemon cards. that's how he was motivated to learn. And his teachers and my mother leaned into that, and they said, okay, well, we're going to learn what these numbers and letters say on these cards so that you can feel empowered, which is so silly, but it's now why he learned to read, because he felt that he had a leg in it. He had a hand in what he was doing. So he was excited about it. Instead of saying, oh no, you need to read the Clifford books, the Spot books. He found and recognized letters and numbers and then was looped into being excited about it. So whatever that looks like for an individual child, follow it. So our job as a partnership at home and at school is to foster that love of learning and love of reading. The last thing we want to do is make it feel cumbersome, overwhelming, or too demanding. At school, we are going to push them a little bit, and we call this the zone of proximal development. So that kind of right on the cusp of challenging, but not overwhelming, because we don't want them to feel incapable, but we do also recognize when they're ready for the next step. So that's our job, though. And that is something that teachers will start to raise it up a notch as they see the child going through these readiness stages. At home, the biggest thing, though, is making sure that they feel that they have a person in their corner that loves learning with them, loves reading with them, and isn't going to make it work. Because at school, they understand that role that a teacher serves every day of, my teacher delivers content, my teacher's going to ask me to do things that are hard sometimes. That's what they expect of me. But at home, it is a different relationship. So I'm not going to prescribe what you should do at home, because it's obviously a social dynamic that's different than a classroom. But I will say that you don't have to worry about at home pushing them to the next level, because that's naturally going to happen in school as they move through these milestones. Their teacher's going to recognize when they're ready and when they're not ready, and what supports and scaffolds they need. At home, the most supportive families are those that foster reading time and going to the library and finding books that their child cares about. It warms my heart when I pull out a book at school and a child goes, I have that book at home, or Mommy read that to me, because that means that they're getting exposed to that and get excited about it, and they can make a homeschool connection, and it becomes incredibly meaningful. So the last thing we want to do as adults is burn them out, make it feel like work. And I see a lot of that in terms of like flashcards, or maybe like workbooks or apps. Those are things that if your child shows natural interest in that, that's great. But if that starts to feel cumbersome for them or like work, they're going to burn out of it very quickly. And they might walk away with the conclusion that reading's not for them, or reading is hard, reading's work, and I don't want to enjoy it. When we want them to walk away with, oh my gosh, reading is enriching, it takes your mind to imaginative places, it teaches you about things that you would never in your wildest dreams know about. And that's what we want to foster, rather than, I can't do it, I'm not going to participate in it, it doesn't bring me joy. So we want to spark joy, as Marie Kondo would say. We want to spark joy.
That's right. That's awesome. That makes total sense. And I think will hopefully provide some parents with some relief that they don't have to stress so much in the preschool years about the reading.
Right. That definitely will come in the kindergarten and first years.
Oh, yeah.
And those educators will also be able to provide appropriate supports about, if there is something you're concerned about, an appropriate developmental way to work that in without overwhelming them. So that will come if you are concerned. You can always ask a teacher. Overall, we've seen as educators a decline in homework, a decline in those kind of forced sit-down academic times outside of school, so that in favor of reading times. We've seen that overall. So I think following that trend academically is due to being responsive in what we're noticing about these burned out students that do not like reading and are tired, when at home they should be continuing that love of learning.
Totally. Well, this was so helpful. I wish I had known all these things way back in the day. I love that they were practical and you gave some real advice on things that parents can work on and keep in mind to help their children in this kind of early years of gaining school experience. And I think this will help parents set teachers up to be more successful in the classroom and to be able to focus on that. So before we wrap up, any last thoughts or tips?
I would say, I think when it comes to the preschool years, parents are often very anxious, and that's okay because a lot of the time this is their first experience with school. And I would just say, if you have worries or concerns, it is totally more than okay to talk to the classroom teacher about it. And most of the time they will affirm you in the same way that we were talking about affirming. They will affirm you and give you advice and resources that work in the classroom based on the working with this age and developmental milestones and what to look for in the child development. If you're nervous, that's okay. Reach out, ask for help, because we've seen it all. We've seen so much go down in the 180 days every year from 8 to 3 every day. It's a lot of time with a lot of different children. So I would say, instead of stressing about it, communicating about it. So that way it could turn out to be nothing. A lot of anxieties. I've had families come to me on the first day on the pre-teacher or the pre-school year conference with so much anxiety and so much to worry about and a list of questions. And then by day 2, it's, oh my gosh, I didn't even need to worry about that. Look how happy they are. Look how engaged they are. A lot of it is just taking a breath, letting them struggle a little bit. And in the end, that struggle and that independence and that exploration of roles is going to allow them to learn. So nothing's going to be flawless. It's going to be messy. And that's how we learn. So I think remembering that is going to be really helpful for those first couple of days.
Well, thanks again for joining me today, Elizabeth, and thank you for pursuing a career in teaching, particularly with the preschool age group, which I know can be tricky. I have no doubt that some parents are going to find this episode really helpful. So thanks again.
Appreciate it. Thanks so much for having me.
All right, bye for now.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to How Long Till Bedtime. To learn how we can work together to improve your child's sleep, please visit sleepandwellnesscoach.com.